Ladies and gentlemen, there's a moment in every person's life when they have to face something incredibly uncomfortable, and that's the moment you realize that the disrespect was your closure. Period. End of story. We wait. We beg. We replay conversations. We write unsent messages in our notes app. We think, if I could just get them to understand, if I could just get them to say they're sorry, if I could just explain myself one more time, then I could finally move on. But guess what? That explanation, that apology, that closure you're dying for, it's not coming. And even if it does, it won't be enough. Because real closure isn't something someone gives you. It's something you give yourself. You don't need another call. You don't need another text. You don't need them to suddenly wake up and realize how badly they treated you. You need to wake up. You need to realize that someone's disrespect, their disregard for your heart, your time, your boundaries, that is all the closure you'll ever need. Because let's tell the truth, people don't just accidentally disrespect you. They choose to. They choose to ignore the message. They choose to gaslight you. They choose to show up late, speak carelessly, cheat, lie, disappear. That's not confusion. That's clarity. And once you start seeing it for what it is instead of what you wish it was, you're free. You are not stuck because of what happened. You are stuck because you're hoping something different will. You're stuck because your brain is addicted to trying to make sense of what someone else broke. But listen, you can't fix what they refuse to own. You can't get peace from someone who only benefits from your chaos. You can't get closure from someone who doesn't even have the capacity to be honest with themselves, let alone you. And if you're still holding on, if you're still making excuses for their behavior, this is your wake-up call. That disrespect, that betrayal, that ghosting, that lack of effort, that wasn't a test. That wasn't a phase. That was your sign. That was the truth showing up louder than any lie you tried to believe. That was life saying, this person is not for you. And I get it. It hurts. You wanted them to care. You gave them your best. You showed up for them in ways you never even showed up for yourself. But listen closely. Loving someone doesn't mean you tolerate their disrespect. Understanding someone's trauma doesn't mean you let them damage you. Being a kind person doesn't mean you stay silent when your soul is screaming for more. Respect is not negotiable. And the moment someone shows you that they can't give it, you don't try to teach them how. You walk away. Your healing does not need their cooperation. Your future does not depend on their apology. Your value was never meant to be proven to someone else. It was meant to be known by you. And let's get really real. You keep waiting for closure because deep down, you're scared that if you let go, it means they won. But here's the truth. You win the second you stop needing anything from someone who gave you nothing but pain. You win when you delete the number and stop rereading the messages. You win when you choose a peaceful silence over painful conversations. You win when you realize that the version of you that needed their love is gone, and what's left is someone who refuses to settle ever again. Don't let someone's inability to see your worth make you question if it's there. It is. Always was. Always will be. You don't need to be understood to be worthy. You don't need to be chosen to be whole. You just need to choose yourself loudly, proudly, and without hesitation. So this is your moment, your turning point, your release. Let the disrespect be the closure. Let the silence be the answer. Let the lesson be the gift. And most of all, let go. Because your next chapter, it doesn't have space for people who didn't value the last one. And when you finally stop carrying the weight of people who were never meant to go with you, you'll rise. You'll rise in confidence. You'll rise in clarity. You'll rise in self-respect. And when you do trust me, they'll notice. But by then, You'll be so far ahead, they won't even be a footnote in your story. Now go, move forward, with your head high, your heart intact, and your energy reclaimed. The disrespect was your closure. Now write your next chapter. When someone disrespects you, it is not a mistake. It's not a miscommunication. It's a decision. That moment when someone crosses your boundaries, ignores your worth, or treats you like you're optional, that moment is crystal clear insight into their mindset and character. And yet, most people don't want to believe it. Why? Because the truth hurts more than the illusion. It's easier to think maybe they didn't mean it than to accept that they just don't value you the way you hoped they did. But here's the wake-up call. The second you minimize that disrespect, justify it, or worse, stay after it, you teach people how to treat you, not by what you say, but by what you allow. And every time you let disrespect slide, every time you don't speak up or walk away, you reinforce the idea that you're okay with being treated like an afterthought. This isn't about being aggressive or confrontational. It's about protecting your peace and your self-worth. The more you try to rationalize someone's poor behavior, the more disconnected you become from your own inner voice that knows you deserve better. Disrespect is a loud and clear signal, and when you're tuned into it, when you stop trying to soften the blow with overanalysis or excuses, it actually becomes liberating. Because now you don't have to waste your energy chasing validation from someone who has no intention of offering it. You don't have to sit by your phone waiting for the apology that's never coming. You get to say, "Thank you for showing me who you are. Now I can act accordingly." Here's the part that stings. Sometimes the people who disrespect us are the ones we love the most. A partner, a parent, a friend, a boss. And because we love them, we think it's our job to tolerate their behavior. We mistake patience for loyalty. But let's get this straight. Loyalty to someone who disrespects you is not strength. It's self-abandonment. There's nothing noble about staying quiet when your soul is screaming. You're not being the bigger person when you let someone chip away at your dignity. You're just being smaller than you were made to be. You don't owe anyone endless chances. You don't need to keep proving your worth to someone who keeps ignoring it. You don't have to keep giving your energy to people who treat it like it's disposable. At some point, you have to look in the mirror and say, if this is how they treat me, then they don't deserve access to me. And that doesn't make you cold or mean or bitter. It makes you someone who finally understands what respect looks like. The hard truth is that people will push the limits of how they can treat you until you push back. Disrespect isn't always loud. Sometimes it's in the subtle digs, the jokes that aren't funny, the cancellations, the lack of effort, the emotional unavailability. It's in the silence, the indifference, the pattern of taking and never giving. And the longer you tolerate it, the more normalized it becomes. But here's the power you have. You get to end the cycle. That person who texts you only when it's convenient, stop replying. That friend who drains you with their problems but disappears when you need support, stop calling. That boss who keeps crossing your boundaries and blaming you for it, start documenting. That partner who shows more affection to their phone than they do to you, start packing. Let your standards be louder than your excuses. Let your energy speak volumes. Let your silence say what your words no longer need to. Disrespect doesn't deserve a second chance. It doesn't require a counter argument. It doesn't need a long explanation. It just needs one thing from you, a decision. The decision to walk away from what dishonors you. The decision to stop chasing closure from someone who doesn't even deserve your time, let alone your emotional investment. The decision to choose yourself over and over again until it becomes your default setting. The world doesn't hand you respect, you claim it. You claim it with your boundaries, with your walk-away power, with your standards, with your self-talk, with every no that honors your peace, and every exit that protects your soul. So the next time someone disrespects you, don't beg, don't explain, don't argue. Look at that behavior and say to yourself, this is all the closure I need. Because the moment you stop hoping they'll change is the moment you change. And that shift, that's your real power. That's when you stop being the victim of their behavior and start becoming the leader of your own life. The disrespect was not an invitation to try harder. It was your sign to move differently. And from that point on, you're not just reacting, you're choosing. Choosing who gets access to you. Choosing how you're treated. Choosing peace over chaos. Choosing clarity over confusion. And that is where your life starts to elevate. Quietly, powerfully, authentically, without drama, without begging, without convincing, just you, living in your truth. Because the second you recognize that disrespect is the closure, you stop waiting and you start healing. You stop wishing and you start moving. And when you move on, you don't just walk away, you rise. Healing doesn't come from closure. It comes from understanding that you are allowed to move forward without it. Most of us get stuck in this endless loop waiting for someone to apologize, explain, or acknowledge the pain they caused. We think we are words to find peace. But that belief is the very thing that keeps us trapped. Because here's the truth. Some people will never give you closure. Not because they can't, but because they don't want to, or they don't care to, or they've already moved on while you're still standing in the wreckage of what they broke. And if you make your healing dependent on them, you hand over all your power. You don't need someone else's permission to heal. You don't need their apology. You don't need the perfect final conversation where everything gets tied up in a neat emotional bow. That's a fantasy. Real life doesn't work like that. Sometimes people leave mid-sentence. Sometimes they ghost you after years of love. Sometimes they betray you and act like you were the problem. Sometimes the people you trusted most pretend you never mattered. And while that kind of pain can feel unbearable, what you do next is what defines your future. You have to become your own closure. That means sitting in the silence they left behind and deciding that your story doesn't end there. It means looking at the wreckage of the relationship, friendship, or situation and saying, I'm going to build something new from this, even if I don't understand why it ended the way it did. That's where true strength comes from, not from getting the answers, but from choosing yourself in the absence of them. When you're waiting for someone to come back and fix what they broke, you're giving them control over your peace. And if they've already shown you that they don't value your heart, why would you trust them to heal it? Healing is not about waiting. It's about creating space, creating new thoughts, new routines, new boundaries. It's about finding the lesson, honoring the pain, and then deciding to live beyond it. You're allowed to say, this hurt, it broke me, but it doesn't get to define me. You can carry the memory without carrying the weight. You can feel the sadness without staying stuck in it. And yes, there will be days when it floods back, when your chest tightens at a reminder, when you miss the version of someone they pretended to be. That's okay. Healing isn't linear. Some days you'll be fine. Other days, the grief will knock the wind out of you. But here's what matters. You keep going anyway. One of the most powerful things you can do is take all that energy you were using to chase closure and pour it into your own growth. Learn something new. Work on your mindset. Get back into your body. Create. Journal. Cry. Lift. Build. Breathe. Do anything that reminds you that you are alive and that this is your life, not theirs. Closure doesn't come from theme. It comes from you. It comes the day you stop obsessing over the past and start getting curious about the future. It comes when you finally understand that not every story was meant to have a satisfying ending. Some chapters are messy. Some characters leave halfway through. Some plots never resolve. But guess what? You are the author. You decide where the story goes from here. Let their silence be your answer. Let their behavior be the truth. Let go of the need to fix, to prove, to wait. Let go of the idea that you need them to see your worth before you can own it. You already have it. It was never theirs to validate. It's yours to protect. When you stop needing closure, you reclaim your power. You stop running in circles around someone else's choices. You start moving forward with intention. You start making decisions based on you, not them. You stop reacting and you start creating. You become a new version of yourself, not because you wanted to, but because you had to. And that version is stronger, clearer, and more grounded. That version doesn't chase people. That version attracts peace. That version doesn't settle for half effort or mixed signals. That version knows what they deserve and isn't afraid to walk away from anything less. Closure isn't something you get. It's something you become. And the moment you realize that is the moment you stop being stuck. You stop replaying the conversations, rereading the messages, wondering what went wrong. You take a deep breath and say, this ends here. Not because I have all the answers, but because I'm ready to write a better next chapter. So if you're sitting in that pain, if you're waiting for the text, the call, the conversation that explains everything, stop, breathe, come back to yourself. Your healing isn't waiting out there in someone else's mind. It's already inside of you. It just needs you to believe in it. You don't need their closure. You need your courage, your clarity, your conviction. And when you have those things, you don't just move on, you rise. Growth doesn't happen in comfort. And moving on, truly moving on, is one of the most uncomfortable things you will ever do, not because you're weak, not because you're broken, but because you have to let go of a version of your life that once made you feel safe. We hold on to people, to relationships, to habits, not always because they're good for us. But if you want to reclaim your power, you have to stop romanticizing the past. You have to stop replaying the highlight reel of what was and start acknowledging the full picture. Growth starts the moment you admit that your old life, your old identity, your old patterns, your old connections no longer serve the person you're becoming. That's not easy. It requires honesty. Brutal, gut-wrenching honesty. It means asking yourself, am I holding on to this because I still love it, or because I'm scared of what life looks like without it? And here's what's wild. Sometimes the pain of staying the same finally outweighs the fear of change. That's your moment. That's when you know growth has started, not because you feel ready, but because you can no longer stay stuck. You start to shift not loudly, but quietly. Not with big declarations, but with small, consistent actions. You stop checking their social media. You stop explaining your worth. You start waking up for you, not them. You start protecting your energy like it's your most valuable asset, because it is. Growth often looks like solitude. It looks like taking space to hear your own thoughts without the noise of someone else's opinions. It looks like journaling when you want to scream. Like going to the gym when you want to collapse. Like saying no when you've been a people pleaser your entire life. Like sitting in the discomfort of the unknown and reminding yourself, I'm still okay. I'm still breathing. I'm still here. You can't grow when you're constantly trying to shrink yourself to fit into a space you've outgrown. It's not your job to make other people comfortable with your growth. It's not your responsibility to dim your light because someone else can't handle its brightness. And let's be real, some people will resent your healing. They will miss the version of you who tolerated their behavior, who didn't have boundaries, who prioritized their needs over your own. When you start changing, when you start choosing yourself, they may fall away. Let them. That's part of the process. Your next level requires a new version of you. One that isn't afraid to be misunderstood. One that doesn't base their worth on external validation. One that knows peace is more valuable than temporary attention. The old you survived on crumbs. The new you is ready for the full meal, and not just in relationships, but in life, in purpose, in identity, in alignment. Don't confuse healing with perfection. Growth is messy. It's 2 steps forward, 1 emotional breakdown back. It's crying in your car, then getting up to crush your goals anyway. It's stumbling, getting triggered, saying the wrong thing, and still choosing to keep going. You're not supposed to have it all figured out. You're supposed to be figuring it out. And as long as you're moving, learning, growing, you're winning. One day you'll look back and realize the pain was your catalyst. That heartbreak was the crack that let the light in. That disappointment was the detour that led you to alignment. That silence was the space that gave birth to your voice. It's all connected, but you can't see it when you're clinging to what's behind you. Growth asks you to trust the unknown, to step into what's next without needing a guarantee. And trust me, what's next is better. Maybe not easier, maybe not faster, but better, stronger, realer, because it's built on truth, on boundaries, on self-respect, on values. And that kind of life, that kind of power, it's unshakable. So keep going, even when it hurts, even when it's lonely, even when your mind tells you it would be easier to go back. That voice is fear. Your future is louder, and it's waiting for you to meet it. Not as the person you were, but as the person you're becoming. When someone disrespects you, they are showing you exactly who they are, and it's your job to believe them. Too often, we try to reason our way out of what we already know deep down. We justify it. We say, they were just having a bad day, or they didn't mean it that way. We minimize our feelings to protect someone else's behavior. But let me be very clear, disrespect is not love. Disrespect is not passion. Disrespect is not something to decode. It's a boundary that's been broken, and it's a signal, loud and clear, that this is where the story ends. You don't need a long conversation to validate your worth. You don't need to be gaslit into believing that your reaction is the problem. If you were made to feel small, invisible, unimportant, or disposable, you already have your answer. That is the closure. That's all the evidence you need to walk away. You don't need to wait for it to get worse. You don't need to be shattered into pieces before you decide to protect your peace. You can leave the first time you're disrespected. You can walk away the moment your spirit feels dimmed. And here's the part most people don't want to admit. We stay because we're afraid. Afraid of being alone. Afraid of starting over. Afraid that maybe this is all we're worthy of. But your fear will lie to you. It will tell you that it's safer to stay where it's familiar than to step into the unknown. But let me ask you something. What's the cost of staying? Your self-worth? Your dignity? Your joy? That's too high a price. You were not put on this earth to beg for the bare minimum. You were not designed to live in a state of constant confusion, questioning your value based on how someone else treats you. Walking away isn't weakness, it's clarity. It's you choosing you. It's not easy, and I won't pretend it is. It takes courage to remove yourself from something you once prayed for. It takes guts to rewrite the story when the old one is still echoing in your heart. But staying in a space that dishonors you isn't loyalty, it's self-betrayal. You don't owe anyone a second chance to hurt you the same way. You don't need to prove that you're forgiving or patient or strong enough to endure mistreatment. You don't need to show how much pain you can tolerate to be loved. That's not love. That's survival. And you deserve better than survival. You deserve safety. You deserve consistency. You deserve respect without having to earn it through silence. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to let go without the apology, without the validation, without the recognition. You just let go. Because peace is more important than proof. Your sanity is more important than their excuses. Your healing matters more than being understood by someone committed to misunderstanding you. If someone can't meet you at the level of emotional maturity you deserve, that's not your fault. And it's not your job to pull them up. You're not here to teach someone how to love you while bleeding from the wounds they caused. That's not a relationship. That's a lesson. And it ends with you. Because when someone disrespects you and you stay, you teach them how to treat you. But when you leave, when you say, I love myself too much for this, that's power. And I know it hurts. I know it's lonely. I know the silence after walking away can feel deafening, but that silence is sacred. It's where you rebuild. It's where you remember who you were before they made you question yourself. It's where you stop living in reaction and start living in intention. It's where you reclaim your worth not because someone finally sees it, but because you do. You don't move on by pretending it didn't matter. You move on by honoring what it taught you, by owning the part of you that tolerated it without shame, by deciding that the next version of you will have stronger boundaries, higher standards, and a deeper connection with your own value. That's growth. That's grace. That's what rising looks like. So let the disrespect be your closure. Let it be the final chapter, not the beginning of a cycle. Let it remind you that what you allow is what will continue. And let it push you toward a future where you never again question whether or not you're enough. Because you are. Always have been. It's just time you started acting like it. Healing doesn't happen in a straight line. It's messy. It's unpredictable. It doesn't follow a calendar or care about how badly you want to just be over it already. You can have an amazing week and then wake up one morning feeling like you're right back at square one. That's not failure. That's healing. That's how it works. And what you need to remember is that every time you feel like you've fallen back, you're not actually starting over. You're starting from experience, from a new level of awareness, from a place that's already stronger than where you were the last time you felt low. The real trap in healing is believing that you should feel better faster, that because you logically understand what happened, you should emotionally be past it. But your heart doesn't follow logic. Your nervous system doesn't operate by reason. When you've been hurt, especially when you've been disrespected or betrayed, your entire body holds on to that experience. And healing means retraining your mind and body to believe that you're safe again. That takes time. And it takes compassion, especially toward yourself. Most people don't talk about how lonely healing can feel. When you walk away from someone who disrespected you, you're not just letting go of that person, you're also letting go of the version of yourself who stayed. That's a death. That's grief. You're mourning the person who tolerated things you no longer want to accept. You're shedding old patterns, old attachments, old illusions. And you're doing it without a map. That's brave. What's even harder is when you're healing in an environment that still reminds you of your pain. Maybe you still see their name pop up. Maybe you still work with them. Maybe mutual friends still bring them up. And every time, it's like ripping off the scab before it's healed. This is where boundaries come in, not just with others, but with yourself. Healing sometimes looks like muting people on social media, like taking a break from spaces that trigger you, like being honest with yourself when you're tempted to reach out, not because you miss them, but because you miss feeling needed, wanted, understood. Those feelings are valid, but they're not reasons to go backwards. One of the biggest lessons in healing is learning how to sit with discomfort without trying to escape it. The sadness, the anger, the emptiness, they're not your enemies. They're messengers. They're there to teach you something. Maybe it's that you gave too much. Maybe it's that you ignored red flags. Maybe it's that you were abandoning yourself for the sake of keeping someone else. Whatever it is, don't silence those emotions. Listen to them. Let them show you where you still need to grow. You have to stop expecting your healing to be fast, clean, or easy. It's not a checklist. It's a transformation. And like any transformation, it requires a breakdown before the breakthrough. You'll have days where you feel strong and grounded, and days where you feel like you're falling apart. That's normal. Healing is cyclical, not linear. Every time you loop back to the pain, you're actually getting a new opportunity to respond differently, to choose a new thought, to set a new boundary, to speak to yourself with kindness instead of criticism. Another hard truth about healing: not everyone will support it. When you start healing, you disrupt the dynamics that were comfortable for others. People who benefited from your silence, your overgiving, your self-sacrifice, they might pull away. They might say, you've changed. And you know what? You have. You're supposed to. Don't let the fear of losing people drag you back into becoming a version of yourself that you've already outgrown. If someone can't respect your growth, they don't belong in your future. Let your healing be about you. Not about proving anything to anyone, not about getting the last word, not about showing them what they lost. True healing happens when you stop focusing on what they did and start focusing on how you want to feel, on who you want to become, on what kind of energy you want in your life moving forward. Celebrate the small wins. The day you didn't check their profile. The moment you said no when your old self would have said yes. The morning you woke up and didn't feel a pit in your stomach. Those moments matter. They add up. They build a new foundation, one that's rooted in self-respect, in truth, in emotional maturity. The most beautiful part of healing is that eventually the things that once broke you don't even shake you anymore. You start to realize that the closure wasn't something they could give you, it was something you gave yourself. That the peace you were searching for was always inside you, just buried beneath the noise. That the love you craved from someone else becomes something you now give to yourself fully and unconditionally. And that's when you know you've truly healed, not because you don't remember what happened, but because it no longer controls you. You no longer need to explain it, fix it, or relive it. You just let it be part of your story now, the whole story, just a chapter, one that led you back to yourself.